Porcelain shattered against marble, followed by a scream high, furious, desperate. The head nanny stormed through the glass hallway, apron half torn, muttering, "I quit. That boy is unreachable." Her heels cracked down the floor like gunfire while the butler hurried behind. Breathless apologies spilling out of him. At the opposite end of the dining room sat Ethan Hale. 10 years old, hands folded neatly, face unreadable. The deaf son of a billionaire, drifting deeper into silence ever since his mother died 2 years ago. The doctors called it progressive loss. The staff called it disobedience. Ethan simply sat still while chaos erupted around him, tapping his fingers on the mahogany table. Once, twice, again. Tap tap. The rhythm precise like a signal meant for someone who could actually hear him from the corner. Clara Jones froze mid-sweep. Nobody noticed her. They rarely did, but she recognized the pattern. Her late brother used to tap the same way when words became too heavy. She inched forward, heart pounding, and signed a single word. "Hello." Ethan stopped tapping. His eyes widened. He sighed back hesitant, trembling. The butler scoffed. "He's just playing." But Clara understood exactly what Ethan had asked. "You see me? 7 weeks, 5 nannies, and 1 boy sinking in silence until someone finally listened." Before Clara ever stepped into that mansion, she already knew what silence could steal. Her brother Samuel had lost his hearing at 6, and their mother couldn't afford specialists. Clara became his interpreter, his voice. Every night after long shifts, she sat under a flickering bulb in their cramped apartment tracing letters onto his palm. Until he smiled again. When he died of pneumonia at 15, she promised herself, "I'll never stop listening, even when the world does." That promise carried her through layoffs, eviction notices, and the morning she answered an agency ad. Discreet housekeeper needed. High security clearance. The Hale estate felt less like a home and more like a museum trapped in its own perfection. Everything gleamed, nothing lived. Evelyn Carter, the head maid, walked her through with clipped instructions. "You'll work the West Wing. No direct contact with the boy." The last girl thought she could help. "She's gone now." Clara nodded. She needed this job. Her daughter's school fees were overdue. But the moment she saw Ethan sitting alone at the dining table, something in her cracked, not pity. Recognition. His hands fluttered under the table, shaping half-formed signs he didn't think anyone would understand. A language he wasn't allowed to use. She pretended to dust nearby just to see if he'd look up. He didn't. But when his toy car slipped off the table, she instinctively signed careful. He froze, his eyes locked on her hands. Slowly, he repeated the motion like someone afraid to believe what they saw from the doorway. The butler frowned. "He doesn't understand those gestures. Don't confuse him." Clara lowered her gaze. "Yes, sir." But as she turned, Ethan tapped the table twice. Tap tap. A quiet thank you. That night in the service quarters, Clara lay awake, tears slipping silently into her hair. Years of being invisible to employers, neighbors, entire systems, and now a child who couldn't hear was the first to truly see her. The next morning, she arrived early. As she polished silver, Ethan watched from the stairs. She didn't speak. She simply signed "Good morning." He smiled, his first in months. Down the hall, Evelyn witnessed it and went stiff. "Miss Jones," she said coldly, "my office." After breakfast, kindness in that mansion wasn't kindness. It was a threat to their order. The mansion ran like a corporation, sterile, strict, obsessed with image. Richard Hale, the billionaire patriarch, appeared only to leave trails of control behind. Notes, rules, expectations. To him, Ethan's silence wasn't grief, it was rebellion. Specialists cycled through, all declaring the boy unmotivated. Each failure hardened Richard's belief, "My son is choosing this." One dinner night, the room shimmered with polished well-silver domes, brittle etiquette. When Ethan dropped his fork, the noise rang like a crime. Richard's jaw twitched. Ethan stiffened with panic. Clara stepped forward before she could stop herself and signed gently. "It's okay." Ethan's shoulders dropped. He even smiled, fragile, hopeful. Richard looked up sharply. "What did she just do?" Evelyn jumped in. "Nothing, sir. She'll be reminded later." Evelyn cornered Clara. "You are here to polish, not raise heirs. Remember your lane." Her tone held history, the kind that demanded Clara bow. But Ethan's smile had already planted something brave in her. By the next morning, Ethan communicated through taps again, 3 taps for thank you, 2 for stay. Silence in that mansion no longer felt powerful. It felt fragile. Then came the luncheon. A perfect garden, polished to a lie. The orchestra played. Cameras flashed, and Ethan's world cracked under the noise. He pressed his hands to his ears, signing frantically, terrified. Guests whispered judgments. The PR manager muttered about optics. Clara set down her tray and crossed the lawn, despite Evelyn's hiss. She knelt beside him and signed, "You're safe. Breathe." Slowly, his breathing steadied. His eyes focused. The crowd stared. Richard descended the staircase like a verdict. "Who authorized you to speak to my son?" Clara rose. "No one, sir. But someone had to listen." Gasps. Evelyn lunged. "She's overstepped again." "You're dismissed," Richard said. Cold and final. Ethan slammed his fist on the table 3 taps. "Thank you." Clara knelt and signed, "I'll come back." Ethan nodded once. Hours later, on a rattling city bus, Clara replayed the rhythm Ethan had tapped before she left. Not random. Morse code. Her brother's game. She scribbled the pattern, decoding with shaking hands. "Help me. They're lying." By dawn, she was back at the estate, slipping through the service entrance. Inside, she overheard Evelyn and Dr. Malcolm in the study. The doctor's voice was tight. His hearing wasn't genetics or trauma. It was the compliance regimen sedatives mixed with ototoxic meds. They damaged his auditory nerve. "We followed orders," Evelyn snapped. "Mr. Hale wanted his son fixed before the merger." "Sympathy doesn't raise stock value." Clara pressed a trembling hand over her mouth and hit record. When they left the room, she entered. Ethan stood in the conservatory, barefoot, signing with trembling clarity. "They think I'm broken." Clara knelt beside him. "You're not broken. You were silenced." He signed. "You came back." She nodded. "And I'm not leaving again." Hours later, during the gala, Richard took the stage, posturing about integrity and innovation. Clara stepped forward through a sea of diamonds and cameras. "If tonight is about integrity," she said, "start with your own house." Ethan rose. He began to sign, tears streaking his cheeks. "You all talk. No one listens. I lost my hearing because of lies." The translation appeared on the ballroom projector. Clara's phone linked to the system. Gasps. Chaos. Then Evelyn's recorded voice blasted across the speakers. "We followed orders. Mr. Hale wanted his son fixed before the merger." The room exploded. Journalists surged. Investors shouted. Richard paled. The doctor's voice followed. "He's deaf because they couldn't stand the shame of a boy who wouldn't talk." Richard stumbled toward his son. "Son," Ethan stepped back and signed with trembling fury, "you never listened." She did. Clara placed a calming hand on Ethan's shoulder. "They're listening now." Security swarmed. Cameras blazed. The empire cracked under the truth. Ethan tapped twice. Clara tapped back 3. Justice filled the mansion for the first time. Morning headlines roared. Board members fled. Richard was suspended. Evelyn arrested. The doctor confessed everything. Clara became a national symbol, the maid who heard what no one else did. Weeks later, a knock came at her small apartment. Richard stood there, not a mogul, but a broken father with a notebook in hand filled with shaky drawn signs. "I keep replaying that night," he said softly. Everyone talked, but he was the only one who tried to be heard. "Teach me." Soon, in a quiet community center, Richard sat across from Ethan at a folding table. No cameras, no wealth, just a father learning to listen. Ethan signed hello. Richard tried, fumbled, tried again. And when he got it right, Ethan smiled his first true smile for his father in years. Clara watched quietly. "That's it," she whispered. "You're hearing him." And for the first time, Richard understood what real power was, not control, but listening.